This week at an AI summit in Paris, both Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance lay out their vision for the sector. But what makes these two speeches interesting is that they appear to hold drastically different views on AI and the role of government. Prime Minister Trudeau spoke about the need for global regulations regarding AI.
We cannot stop progress. We shouldn't want to. But we need to have guardrails, transparency, accountability. We must put AI to the service of everyone in both high and low-income countries, and not just for an increasingly small group of ultra-rich oligarchs whose only concern is the value of their stock portfolios. We must put the middle class at the center of AI, and AI in service of the middle class, allowing people everywhere to work smarter, not harder, to do more with less. Businesses must grow faster along with their employees, instead of doing the same thing they do now, but with fewer employees. We must go beyond imitating what builders, creators, and artists already do so well. We need to make sure that the profits, the power, the benefits that come from this new technology are fairly shared.
However, J.D. Vance called for deregulation in a speech that appeared to be a drastic shift from common policy debate on AI.
Now, our administration, the Trump administration, believes that AI will have countless revolutionary applications in economic innovation, job creation, national security, healthcare, free expression, and beyond. And to restrict its development now will not only unfairly benefit incumbents in the space, it would mean paralyzing one of the most promising technologies we have seen in generations. Now, with that in mind, I'd like to make 4 main points today. Number 1, this administration will ensure that American AI technology continues to be the gold standard worldwide, and we are the partner of choice for others, foreign countries, and certainly businesses as they expand their own use of AI. Number 2, we believe that excessive regulation of the AI sector could kill a transformative industry just as it's taking off, and will make every effort to encourage pro-growth AI policies. And I like to see that deregulatory flavor making its way into a lot of the conversations this conference. Number 3, we feel very strongly that AI must remain free from ideological bias, and that American AI will not be co-opted into a tool for authoritarian censorship. And finally, number 4, the Trump administration will maintain a pro-worker growth path for AI, so it can be a potent tool for job creation in the United States.
We're going to bring in Yael Ossowski, Deputy Director at the Consumer Choice Center, for more on the future of AI policy. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Theresa.
Now, I want to start with the Prime Minister's view of AI and his call for global regulations or guardrails. Now, what exactly would these guardrails be, and who exactly would enforce that?
I think it's a very good question. There have been a number of attempts. If you listen to the speech that he gave, at least in French at the very beginning, he sort of claims ownership, that back in 2018 during the G7 summit, it was actually him who came up with the idea of having some kind of AI summit, and it would be a lot of these international organizations that would kind of oversee it. And in his speech later, he kind of mentions that you have all these signatories to the declarations at the AI summit, and there should be some common accord, some kind of global accord. Not to say that there's any kind of agency necessarily that would be in charge of this or that would introduce the guardrails, but there surely would be some common standards. That's more the Trudeau version of this, is that there are going to be global standards. Canada would be just a part of that, and then hopefully every other country would kind of fall in line with what those common guidelines are that could be enforced throughout the different country, and it'd really be up to peer pressure, common investments, and then basically checking in on every other country every time they have a new get-together like a G7 or a G20.
And for J.D. Vance, what did you make of his speech in Paris and his argument that deregulation is actually the answer?
Yeah, I think for the Trudeau aspect, it was very top down. It was, this is what AI should do. And I think with J.D. Vance, his entire notion was very bottom up. It is AI is happening, here's how we should respond. So it was a much more looking at institutions, looking at incentives, and figuring out the ways to actually allow the technology to grow and to develop, and then to also be sure that people who are using them are going to be free to do so. There's not going to be that ideological bias, and that also we're not choking out the sector that is very nascent, very new, and we actually don't know exactly what AI will do yet. There's a lot of fluff, there's a lot of talk, there's all kinds of panels and conferences and everything that's all about it. But right now, we don't know the direction of AI. And it should be really incumbent upon those who have a hand in it, who are investing in it, who are creating the technology or doing the research. They're the ones who are going to drive that development rather than the governments. So I think that is sort of the starkest difference that you have between the vision of J.D. Vance and then the vision of Justin Trudeau.
And how is the vice president's view different from the Biden administration's view on AI?
So the Biden administration really took a page out of the European playbook. The European Union has the AI Act, and that's really based on risk. So they want to basically have some kind of sign off every time any kind of large language model will incorporate some level of risk. They'll be dealing with identity or biometrics or dealing with healthcare. They want to have a sort of stoplight system: green light, yellow light, red light. And that's what the Biden administration had started to do. There were a number of executive orders that Biden was looking at. He had concentrated a little bit on energy and perhaps making sure that the energy use of AI would also be curtailed. And JD Vance and the Trump administration have just turned that completely around. They want to unleash the sector. They want to be sure that we can have good energy abundance that can feed AI systems and data centers, and they really want the US to play a part in being the global leader. So I think it's a bit different from the Biden approach, which definitely was a bit more hands-on, a bit more top to bottom. And I really think that the Vance Trump version of AI right now is really let the sector grow, let it provide dividends and benefits for the American people. And then basically we can keep that in line with what we believe our principles are. And this will help everyone flourish at the same time.
And the vice president spoke about the potential of AI. Are there any potential developments that stick out to you that are worth focusing on?
I mean, definitely there's a lot that's happening with, not just the funky tools that we play with all the time, word generation, image generation, but it's really applied to healthcare and it's applied to automation and manufacturing. Definitely AI is a growing capability with any of our military applications. That's a huge sector if you just look at the stock market right now. So there's a lot of that stuff that's happening, and we're just trying to figure out how we can place those dots, how we can cross those T's. And I really looking at where the development is, where the money is. Right now, it's really spreading to every sector. But I think healthcare is definitely a big one. Definitely looking at automation, at manufacturing. This is where the real money is going to be. There's also big changes when it comes to culture, when it comes to academia, the processing of knowledge. There's still ways that we can fine tune this, but there are some dividends that we can still benefit from today. And the greatest thing about it, most of this is based on open source software, so you can install it, you can run it yourself on your own computer. You don't need anything fancy. And I think that's at least a very good beginning for at least starting to learn and figure out how this stuff works.
And with views clearly kind of split right now between Canada and America, I'm curious, is this kind of like a red flag or a cause of concern that countries don't have an agree or a joint decision on how AI should be handled yet?
You've had differing approaches. Singapore has had one thing. I mean, the UK actually did not sign the Paris AI Summit declaration either. Neither did JD Vance.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's a huge concern now because again, these industries or developments are very concentrated. Many of them are in the United States. Some of them are in Europe right now. So that's where most of it is. We're still learning exactly how this will impact, all of our privacy policies, how it impacts copyright, how it impacts the medical sector. So it's probably okay that we don't have all of this. I think having good competition and figuring out where the best rules will be is probably going to be the better bet. But again, we've also seen this undercurrent because while AI and computing power, we're talking about code, another big one where Canada could play a part is energy. And I will give props to Prime Minister Trudeau for talking about Canada's nuclear power. Basically having cheap, abundant energy could feed AI for a long time. So I think that is a big advantage. And the United States can also provide some power there. So I do think that's where you're going to have a lot more emphasis from the government sector is looking at how to either regulate this, restrict this, or see how better energy prices and better energy policies will also further AI, which I think there Canada is going to play a great part.
Now, we do just have under a minute, but to go back to what Trudeau had said during the AI summit, he touched on the fact that he doesn't want only the ultra wealthy to benefit off of AI. Do you think that this was a bit of a shot at Donald Trump and kind of where he's trying to take the Trump administration? And there have been some claims that the ultra wealthy are really benefiting from Donald Trump right now.
I think it was definitely a way that he tried to get it in there. Probably his advisors had to scratch, two or three mentions from his speech, and he obviously made a lot of allusions to the United States and to the administration when he was talking. I do think that is sort of a growing cleavage between, let's say, Silicon Valley. People call them the bro oligarchs, and having certain control or access even to President Trump. I think it is a big narrative, but again, because many of these tools are open source and because there are all these different companies that are being created, you also have all these wrappers that are put on top of things like ChatGPT. You have open source models that are coming from China, from Canada, from the US. So actually, this is changing all different types of society. It's not necessarily just concentrated in a few billionaires. We obviously know the big names like Elon Musk and Sam Altman, but also there are all these different entrepreneurs that are working on things in many different universities, especially in Toronto. This is a big deal. Also in Edmonton. So I think there's definitely a big push from Justin Trudeau and a lot of that ilk who would like to try to say that it's the billionaires that are the problem. But realistically, we have those tools in our hands right now. It's really incumbent upon us to be sure we can improve our lives and provide this technology for everyone. And I think we're on the right path.
Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much.